I am unashamed. What about you?
So this is the first post duck season episode, because when it kind of comes down to the end of duck season, it affects our podcast recordings. It affects everything. So I'm down here, Jase, in my Southern Command Center. I call it the Southern Lair in Gulf Shores, Alabama, because I'm married to a woman that loves to be in Gulf Shores more than she loves to be in West Monroe. So I just have to bide my time. I'm kind of like you. I got split homes.
Well, I mean, we've had something happen that's been the talk around here, because on the last day, what people don't realize is every year of duck season, since I told my wife while we were dating, when we were dating and it got serious, I said, look, I hunt for 60 days every winter. I hunt ducks. Hopefully I can make my living doing that, which did happen. But if that's a problem, let's end this. So what she came up with once we got married was she was fine with that. And look, I will say this. I've said this before, and I actually got letters questioning whether this was true, but I'll say it again. She has never said a complaining word about me duck hunting for the 60 days. Never. She's never said, oh, I can't believe you're doing that, and not one time. So that's been awesome, because we worked that out early. However, what she did come up with is, now I used to shave after duck season because she doesn't like the beard. Of course, then once we had our little duck show, that ended. So now she came up with this idea that on the last day of duck season, we celebrate. So it's basically a date, which is fine with me, because I'm like, and that doesn't mean I don't hunt the last day. So she came up from Austin, and so yesterday was the last day. So now I could either plan a party in the morning before church, which isn't very practical, or in the afternoon. And, I mean, it's the day. I'm going to go hunting, but I'm going to come in for church. And so I went with the morning hunt, which produced one duck. We were there. You were there. Everybody leaves. Well, Phil and his crew go back. You had your daughter, Phyllis. Who were the participants?
I decided not to go on Sunday evening. I had been on Sunday morning. We didn't do much. And I said, late in the year, one last hoorah. I went up and persecuted the brothers. I'm making a jest here. I delivered a lesson for them about you reap what you sow. Keep God number one. Love God, love your neighbor, be generous toward both. So that was the lesson. Came back down here, and they said, Burley was the only one there. He said, what do you think about this evening? One last hunt. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I don't think we're going to do much. And they said, well, he put the guilt trip on me. You have your daughter, and she would like to go duck hunting this afternoon. Okay. And I thought about it a little bit. I said, well, who's the crew? Stone calls up, and he said, look, I got BK. That's his little second daughter. She's about, 3 foot tall, about 10 years old. Deer slayer. She kills big bucks, but she wants to go duck hunting. So Stone said, I'm taking BK, and Phyllis said she wants to go. So, you're her dad. What do you think? You can bring Burl with you. So the crew was a 10-year-old child.
With her dad.
A 45-year-old missing daughter who showed back up.
A dad and his daughter.
Yeah, the first time she's ever duck hunted in her life was this duck season. Last day, what are you going to do, Phil?
You had Burley, which was kind of a fifth
Burley
wheel.
was trying to, because he wanted to one last stand, but anyway, he talks me into it. I said, all right, so let's go. So the one end of the duck blind was your buddy Stone. I'm on the other end of the duck blind, and in between was Burley, BK, a 10-year-old girl, and
Phyllis.
and Phyllis that we haven't seen in our life except this year.
Your
By the
point
way,
being, these aren't accomplished.
it was the anniversary of her showing up was yesterday.
Perfect. See, from my perspective, look, here's what happened. Because when y'all shot the first pintail, Jay and Burley sent me a text. Of course, I'm in front of a fire with my wife. Look, trust me, I'm feeling good right now.
There was more ducks hit that duck blind. The pipeline floater, as we call it, we'd hunted it one time. Y'all avoided it like the plague. Y'all kept saying, they're not there, they're not there. We went out there, and the water is falling, and it's about a little over knee deep, little too deep. But I said, well, so you getting there. We jumped up about 100 ducks at 2 o'clock on Sunday evening after meeting with the brothers. Well, now the brothers and sisters are in a little floating duck blind on the side of the pipeline over there, and the ducks descended out of the heavens. Literally, they just came from every direction, and I'm like, I said, I hate that old Jase is going to miss this. I said, because this is a happening in the last 2 or 3 hours of duck season. The teal hit us, the mallard hit us, the pintails hit us, the widgeon hit us. There were no woodies. It was all pintails, mallards.
So y'all smoked them. Y'all have pictures.
Teal.
Y'all ought to post some of those pictures they shot, because they were sending me these pictures. But I want to read you a text this is a good thing about having a cell phone. You said there's very few good things. I have one.
Okay.
At 9:30, I sent a text to Burley and Jay. The text reads, I recommend that y'all go to the north end of the pipeline. Here is the brush in the boat.
Stone left that bit of information out. He said we ought to go to the north end of the pipeline because I'm always in to hunt the pipeline floater, whether we kill a duck out of it or not.
So I'm saying, even though I wasn't there, I felt like I participated in leading the posse to the location of where it could go down.
It was a ragtag crew of individuals that made that duck hunt. 10-year-old kids and, middle-aged women. You're like, okay, all right, yeah, we'll go have a big time.
But here's what I want to say. Now, was I shocked that y'all killed a limit of mallard, pintails? Yes, just mainly for the fact that I didn't think you had assembled enough people to actually shoot the ducks, even if they came in. So I was stunned.
Look, we had how to kill a duck on the water instructions. No, BK. All right, now you see that duck? He's sitting on the water. He's swimming away. Start shooting at him. Boom, wow. Maybe a little high time, but
so the next one come in, you go
Stone
through the same.
was coaching his 10-year-old daughter how to kill a crippled duck on the water, which I thought was interesting.
Well, here's what
Phyllis, she was just looking around like, man, I know now why y'all do this.
Yeah.
I mean, you look up, it'd be about 30, 40 teal just in your face that we didn't even see them coming. It was like it was women, men and women.
So to clarify, wait a minute, just to clarify, BK is 13. She looks like she's 50, but she's actually 13. She is a good shot, although she hasn't duck hunted. But she told me last night, she called me, she was so proud. She said she killed 2 green-winged teals, what she said.
Yep, she did.
I don't know. Yeah, which was really good. But what was
hard to tell when everybody boom, 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 boom.
Well, legally, you are supposed to ascertain who shot what, despite the fact that there's 6 people shooting in the same direction.
At 40 different teal. 40 different. Hard to tell who exactly got what.
So let me say this again.
I'm sure, though, I noticed it with Phyllis when I hunted with her this year. The hardest thing to anticipate about duck hunting, especially when you've got ducks coming in, is the speed in which it all happens.
You are correct.
I mean, it's literally, it happens so fast.
Split seconds. Split seconds.
If you haven't hunted much, you can't anticipate that. So I know every time we blah, 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 and she's just getting up because it was all happening so fast, and it's hard to anticipate.
Well, I just wanted to say I had zero disappointment in what happened. I'm glad y'all shot them. What stood out to me more than y'all shooting the ducks and me missing out on it. I mean, I've hunted the 59 other days. I missed 2 or 3, I think, and so I look at the big picture. But what I saw was you and your daughter having a good time. Jay and his daughter. Burley, probably some a need for counseling in the future, that he's duck hunting 1,000 miles from his family. I'm just kidding. I mean, they got a deal. He comes over, he makes extra money, they go back. Hey, sometimes it works out. And I was with my wife, which was awesome, and we were celebrating like we do traditionally every year at the end of duck season, because it is a grind and it is a strain on everybody due to the lack of sleep and just the scheduling. It's just, well, she calls it an ordeal.
You have to be acclimated, which takes a time frame. When you first start, if you're going to do this every day, and you meet with the brothers on Sunday morning, so that gives you a little time if you want to hunt early. Right. Then if you want to hop over after lunch, after you share Jesus with people, then you say, okay, then you work the duck hunting in. But I will have to admit, I mean, it is a pretty good grind, and yeah, it's crawling, walking through mud, fighting the brush. I mean, running down cripples, watching your dog, it's training him.
It's exhausting, and there's injuries that occur, and it's something we've always done. We figured out a way to make our living from it. And look, we love it. But I will say this, in the order of importance, we love God more than ducks.
Yep.
We love people, especially those in our relationships. I love my wife more than I love duck hunting. We have an arrangement that a lot of people are envious of, some of my buddies who duck hunt, because they didn't have that. They didn't get that worked out prior to marriage. And they're fussing and fighting. I said, but look, I've proven, and even yesterday, to the fact I would never disrupt what my wife and I share. She's awesome about my love for duck hunting, and so that celebration was awesome. So I'm just putting it in priority, especially when we get to this story in Acts 5.
Well, let me say something too, Jase, that I commend Dad on. You didn't really want to go, because you didn't think it'd be very good because of the morning hunt, and yet you did it. Really because of Phyllis being there. And, we missed all our first half of her life, or most of whatever. And so I commend you for making that decision, really just to do it for her. And of course, the Almighty blessed you with that by just having the ducks pour into the hole. So, I mean,
wow.
There's a certain, the last day of duck season, there's a certain amount of weariness that has crept in, going all the way back to November 20th. Now it's the last day of January, and you have not missed a beat, just going. Very rarely, maybe 2 or 3 on Sunday mornings, we'd say, well, let them rest. They would come back later. But we are diligent in our.
Oh, I mean,
but
look.
now, I mean, really, they bombed that thing yesterday, and I was really surprised that many ducks came in. It was almost like, a spiritual thing.
Yeah,
I know this.
I'm going to bring this all together after we take a break.
So I don't know how this works with the genetics of going bald, because in our family, our grandpa was bald. Remember, he didn't have much hair at all, even younger than us. And then some of my uncles were that way, my Uncle Harold. But then through Dad, we're all hairy and hardly lose any of our hair. I don't know what someone I'm sure knows the genetics of it all. But I know for those that lose their hair, it stinks. So one of our sponsors that's been with us from the beginning is Keeps.com. Basically, they try to help you hold on to your hair. They can't regrow it for you, but if you're starting to lose it, you might want to check these guys out. You go to their website, Keeps.com. That's KEEPS.com/door. Get 50% off your first order for all their hair loss treatments. So if you're going bald and you don't want to lose any more hair, you might want to give these guys a shot. Keeps.com/door. Hang on to your hair.
Just remember this. My son preserves sound judgment and discernment. Do not let them out of your sight. Sound judgment and discernment. They will be life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. Then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. Remember, preserve sound judgment and discernment. You weigh these things. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Have no fear of sudden disaster or of look at America now. I've never seen this many people run around with this much fear since I've been on the earth. Well, have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being snared. You read text like that and you say, you know what? Jesus, number one, no doubt about it. Whatever you're into, what could be coming, so something out of the blue. So I read these texts and I live by them, and we all do, Jason. We're better off for it, is all I can say.
I think the duck season played out like a movie at the end. You know how they identify the characters? I mean, this was your first duck season with your daughter. Who would know that she loves duck hunting? I mean, as far as your 5 kids, she's probably, it's me and her, then maybe Al, and then it drops off significantly down to Willie, who cares nothing about duck hunting. I mean, he likes to hunt. He's more of a deer hunter. I mean,
Jeff too.
But it looks like a movie to me where at the end we are with the relationships that matter. You know, Jay with his daughter and Phil with his daughter, and I was with my wife. And even though I missed it, which is kind of funny because they sent me a picture every couple minutes of something that they had just shot. I kept wanting.
They meaning Stone
and Burley constant.
They were hoping, Jace. They were hoping to get a little under your skin. Let's face it. That's why.
Yeah, they were trying to.
They were, but I kept chuckling. I'm like, that's awesome, great, that's awesome. But what I was thinking was, act like you've been there before. Act like you've been there before.
No, you don't have to do the Billy White Shoes dance.
Well, they were sort of spiking the ball, as they say.
Yeah, but I'm like, you know what? I never worry about that on the way it all worked out. I was just glad they came because we were wondering, where are they at? You know, we thought we were going to get them that morning, but we knew they were there. They decided to move at 2:00, but we learned something. Sometimes, you know, ducks move on their own time for whatever reason, and trying to figure that out is way more fun than just quitting and saying, they're not coming.
We pulled, well, with your advice to Stone, we pulled a Barrett Satterley on that little swab.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine.
I want to mention one thing. Jay sent me a picture, a fantastic picture, because I only got one, and it was last night, Jay's. And it was Dad and Stone and BK. And then, of course, they had that big rack of ducks. I saw those pintails saying there. I thought, man, pintails, that's unbelievable. But, you know, I looked at that and I thought, how many activities are there out there when you can have 4 generations? If I had been in that picture, we would have 4 generations of family, Dad. You to me, to my son-in-law, to my granddaughter. So this is your great-granddaughter. 4 generations that could be involved in an activity and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there out there that's even? I don't even know of anything else that other than something like this, something hunting or something that you could even do.
By the way, Al, this thing about long life, make your path straight. Keep my commands, God said, in your heart. Now check this out. For they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Well, you know, prolong your life. I mean, I'm sitting there with my great-granddaughter yesterday, BK, was sitting there, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm 74. I said, if I'm not careful, BK's 13, you said. I mean, she could be married and have kids, so I'm looking at great-grandchildren. I mean, so it's a pretty cool thing because with her, those pictures we took yesterday with the ducks, and she was sitting there, you know, and had her face paint on, you know. Well, you think about that, you say she'll remember that the rest of her days on the earth. She'll remember days like that.
She killed a big old 13-point buck this year, along
Yeah.
with three other deer. So
Well, that
she's
was
a
my
killer.
whole point in view of Romans 1, where it says, you know, a famous verse that says that God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature can be clearly seen based on that from what has been made, all men are without excuse. But then he goes into this priority list. And when you get out of whack, God, humans, animals, things, then chaos and evil behavior comes from that. And that's why I said that. It was like a movie the way it ended with the special relationships, and we're doing it over something that God has made that produces a meal for us in the end where people are gathered around. And so when those priorities get out of whack, you see what it happens to a culture or society.
Did y'all see what happened last week at Reelfoot Lake? Did y'all see that story?
I heard about that, about
two guys getting in a fight.
Being shot.
Yeah,
They got in an argument, and I'm assuming it was over hunting, but I don't know what it
Oh,
was.
it was over hunting. It was, you move. No, I'm not moving. I'm here first. We've been hunting this 100 years, whatever.
So a 70-year-old man shoots and kills two mid-20-year-old duck hunters, and there's another guy in the blind with him. He wrestles the gun away from the older man and just butts him in the head with the end of the stock, knocks him out. He loads up the two guys in the boat to try to get them to the hospital. They both die. And then I guess the man either killed himself or drowned out there in the lake.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. You hate to form an opinion over the details of a news story, but that's what they say. That's what I saw. And
Right.
I know one thing. That's where you have that backwards, where where you hunt and in your enjoyment, you've elevated over people and something.
Well, that's why I want to bring it up, Jace, because we're talking about the unity of family and generational blessings. And then you come up on a situation like that involved in the same sport we're talking about that we love. And we, in the old days when we hunted public lands, we had some issues sometimes with people, but none of us would ever think of doing something like that. Just for somebody to get pushed to the point where it made sense to take two lives over hunting.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I said you don't know. I mean, your first reaction is somebody does that. I mean, either he's got a screw loose or he's on drugs or whatever. Your mind, because you just think, well, how in the world would you not value human life, even if it was an enemy that you were feuding with over? Because look, I was in a duck blind with 3 other God-fearing, Jesus-loving people, and we're hunting. I have a lease on this duck hole. And it was basically a hunting club. And I had made a deal. I said, I'd like to join y'all's hunting club because I want to duck hunt this little lake that y'all have. And I noticed that nobody hunts it. They said, well, how do you know no one hunts it? I said, because I don't hear the shooting. All I hear is deer rifles. And they said, well, we don't have any room for any more deer hunters. I was like, perfect. I don't want to deer hunt. I'll pay the same thing as everybody else. I'll duck hunt. Does anybody duck hunt there? He said, nope. So I'm in the blind. We build the blind. You built the blind. I'm hunting with 3 other individuals, and I hear a vehicle come up and boat launch and all this. And it was, this was a redneck boat launch. I just hear the boat hit the water out of the back of the truck. And 3 guys came up into our decoys, and I said, howdy. And they didn't say, hey. They moved in front of our decoys, and there was 3 little cypress trees, and they started tacking a sign on a tree, and it had a name on it. I said, what y'all doing? They said, we're claiming this spot. Now, I'm just sitting there thinking, here's 4 of us with loaded guns, and you're in my decoys, and you're claiming a spot that I've already claimed. I said, well, this might get dangerous. And I probably shouldn't have said that, but I was like, if you hunt right there, you're 20 yards in front of us. We can't both hunt here. And he said, well, you don't have a sign up. I said, well, I got a 20-foot duck blind, 20 by 20. That is the sign that this spot's been claimed. He said, well, if you'll read the bylaws in the club, you have to put a sign with a name on it. So I'm claiming this spot. So now I had two options. Now, was I mad? Yes. Especially, you know, I have a loaded gun in my hand, and this guy's acting like a complete idiot. But in the end, I decided to choose life over anything else that was crossing my mind. And, you know, we never hunted that blind again. And when the water came up, we got the blind out of there, and I never paid my dues again. And you thought, well, you got bullied. Yeah. Well, what was the alternative there? We've obviously thrown logic and reason out the window. Here's a guy coming up with two of his buddies, and they said, what are you going to do?
Yeah. It's a bad situation. That's what I'm saying. And we've seen them like that before. Let's take another break.
So, I don't know. We have a lot of our sponsors. It's kind of, I laugh about it, or seem to be centered around sleep. We got mattresses we talk about. We got couches we talk about. And sheets, you know, go on your bed or all these different things. So Boll & Branch has been with us a pretty good while, and they do really make a high-quality product. What's funny is Lisa and I were sleeping on Boll & Branch sheets before they ever became a sponsor for our show. They're that good. Super soft, total comfort, quality, you know, that they're really good. And I think by now, I know Dad has some because I think you do too.
Yeah. Excellent.
Really, really good. So we want you to check these guys out because I'm all about sleep, you know, and sleeping well. So you get a fair price when you go check these guys out. 30-day risk-free trial with free shipping and return. So if you don't like it, they'll take it back. Here's what you do. Experience the best sheets you've ever felt at Boll & Branch, BOLL and branch.com. And you get 15% off your first set of sheets when you use the promo code Robertson when you check out. So BOLLANDBRANCH.com, promo code Robertson.
We've seen them like that before. It's just not worth it. But, you know, I don't know. People are like that in the hunting world, you know, over a deer stand or
I think it's whatever. Just the world. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned that Romans 1, when you exchange the truth of God, which is a love for him, and it's not that we love him, that he loved us, the nature of God and how that trickles down into loving other people and having this order of God, humans, you know, things, animals in that priority list. He said, for although they knew God, they neither glorified him nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their hearts were darkened. And so I know when somebody's coming through my decoys, they have guns, we have guns, and they're trying to cause conflict that could escalate into somebody dying because it could have happened that quick. You have to think about these principles, but I like how it says they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal man, birds, animals, and reptiles. Now, granted, this is a little different in that they were worshiping just idols that look like this, but the practical conclusion is the same one. When you elevate birds, animals, or, you know, selfish ambition rather than the immortal God, what happened? God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts, and then you have sexual impurity. But he gets to 25 and he says they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator. Because to me, that's what it all comes down to.
So as a pattern, Proverbs 11:27, he who seeks good finds goodwill, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Those guys were searching. They were searching for evil to pull a stunt like that.
You described it one time, Dad, because we talk a lot on here about Second Amendment and the right to defend ourselves. And all of us are armed, and somebody comes up to try to shoot us. You know, you don't want that to happen, but you want to be able to defend yourself.
Yep.
But the idea of searching and looking for, when you described that time they were shooting at your gate, which is about, a quarter mile up the road.
Yep.
You heard that, and your first instinct was, they're attacking your property, is to grab your AR and head up there and confront them. But you then thought about it and thought, you know what? That's different than them trying to attack my house. If I go up there, it's a bunch of redneck teenagers and we have a big shootout and I shoot 3 or 4 of them, what's that? How's that going to play itself out? And
that's correct.
Out of wisdom, you didn't search out trouble.
That's right.
I mean, we're prepared to deal with the evil one, but we don't want to seek it out. I think.
Well, look, and in my case, and I think this is what's happened in our country, a lot of Christians, they look at what I did and they're like, well, you should have fought. You were right. You signed the contract. You made the agreement. They're wrong. But I look, they've been drinking. I could see them drinking.
Yeah.
They have guns. We have guns. I just thought to myself, is this worth pursuing? And I thought, no, because it's just duck hunting. And guess what? I'll go hunt somewhere else.
It sounds like Proverbs 11:12. A man who lacks judgment derides his neighbor. Like, what do you think you do? But a man of understanding, Jase, holds his tongue.
Yeah. But I feel that same way in the country. People are like, well, we got to fight to overcome injustice. And look, I'm all for fighting. But we've focused on the spiritual qualities. I mean, because really when it came down to me seeing those 3 guys in a boat, I thought they need Jesus. Because if they got Jesus, then their priorities would change and they would realize this is a big lake. I don't mind you hunting there. Just go hunt over there.
That's just one little glimpse of what you said, the whole world. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. You say that always they want this, they want your stuff. They're just encroaching. It's just a maze of people saying, I think I deserve this. You don't have. You got it. I don't. I want what you have. It just never ends.
That's right.
A man reaps what he sows was the lesson yesterday.
Now, I do think there's some things worth dying for. If somebody came in there and wanted a conflict and, it was about protecting my wife or daughters or sons. I mean, there are times, I think, where you say, okay, but duck hunting, where I'm going to duck hunt, that's not one of them.
Right.
Yeah, that deal in Reelfoot, unfortunately, that escalated into what happened. It was not worth it.
Yeah, and think about what a tragedy. These 2 young men, I don't know if they had families. I don't know what their situation was, but and even the older gentleman that shot him, who's now dead as well. I mean, look at the legacy he leaves for his family. It's terrible.
Yep.
I mean, it's an awful, awful thing that you get pushed to. I think the idea is you always seek a peaceful way for any sort of altercation. I mean, that's a good biblical way to do it. Even the founders, because, since we've talked about the Capitol deal, I've gotten some emails from people that said, I get what you guys are saying about trying to rise above and look at this thing from a spiritual point of view. But our country was founded on, a revolution. Maybe this is the time to stand up and fight. But you got to remember, the founders, they did have a revolution from this authority and king that was, of Britain. But then they set us up with a situation to try to solve our differences peacefully. Even protest, they put the word peaceful protest in that. So you just can't. Violence is not going to be the answer if you follow the founders. Now, we may get to there some point down the road, but I don't think we're there now. That
Thomas Jefferson said, as a last resort.
That's right.
The Second Amendment allowed you to reject tyranny as a last resort. Well, so the debate would be, when's the last resort?
That's right, and I get what people are saying. Me personally, my opinion, I don't think we're there. I think we should still try, do what the founders intended to happen.
But the overall thing, what you can do is live Jesus every day. In your neighborhood, in your home, at your workplace.
That's right.
The change in the heart is the best way. I mean, but people say, yeah, well, I agree with that, but they want to fight. They want to, but just like Jesus' followers, they want to pick up a sword and defend him. And he's like, hey, hang on.
Amen. I came here to give my life.
Yeah, you get one dog running the show, For lack of guidance, Proverbs 11:14. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, Jace. But many advisors make victory sure. It does need to be spread out, the power. You don't want to get it down to one little small group or one individual. It does not work out well when one dude's calling all the shots and the people are not part of the process. That's kind of where we are in America right now.
That's where we seem to be headed.
Yeah, and to say we don't ever fight would be a mistake. When the shooter came through the neighborhood blasting, I armed myself and went out looking for this guy because I thought, now this is time when shooting.
Bullets start through your house, hitting the door faces. You tend to be a little bit
But I just say that to say it's not like we're going to the spiritual in every case that comes along. There are times where you have to grab a weapon and defend something because it reaches the level of we can't live like this. So I mean, even as far as a country, I can see that reaching a point. Up until this point, in my opinion, no, we haven't reached that level. Is it headed there? Very well may be, but in my opinion, it's not time to storm the whole place and start a riot.
So I agree with you. That's exactly what I've been saying in response to people that have been asking us about it, because we've been talking about it. It's interesting, Jace, I found that when you look at what you said a minute ago about the disciples wanting to defend because they never really got the whole idea of the spiritual kingdom. Even when Jesus was leaving, he was explaining it to them again. They kept asking about restoring physical Israel. But it's interesting that even after the resurrection and ascension, and when you read every one of Peter's sermons, Peter and John, Acts 2, Acts 3, Acts 4, and also again later, he's still like to convict these people because these were the people that were standing there saying, crucify him. When Pilate was trying to, and Peter even brings it up that Pilate was, he wanted to let him go. And so he was using that to convict them of their guilt. But it's interesting because, Jesus did say, I came here to die. It's like the apostles, even post-ascension, had a hard time wrapping their brain around that. The idea of how it all went down.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we keep mentioning these verses, the weapons we fight with are not of the world's. I mean, what did he mean by that? I think we're discounting the power of God's Spirit, the power of having someone like Jesus as our Lord and having God, the creator of the universe, on our side. I mean, what can happen, the fire and the culture change that can happen from that being spread through what Jesus did is way more powerful than any kind of orchestrated option as far as a war or, I mean, that's what he said. If you're going to believe in this, you're going to believe in this. I think it also is a better way to function for our society. When you read this in Acts 4, before we get to the scary story in Acts 5, a lot of people say, well, they were promoting socialism. But actually, when you read it, he gave you the clue in how this worked. And I'd like to read it. It says in Acts 4 in verse 33, with great power, the apostles...
Start at 32.
32. All the believers, that's what I want to say, were one in heart and mind. Now, we know what had united them. Jesus and who he is and what he did and what he will do. No one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they shared everything they had because it comes back to what we started over the duck hunting situation. When you're a son or daughter of God, you love people more than things. It's just part of it. That happens immediately once you get in. Then it says, with great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, which is way more powerful than any kind of military fortress. Having someone who's unkillable,
Yep.
he's the greatest power there is. Talking about a superpower. And much grace was upon them all, which is your way to renew each day when you make mistakes. But here's what I wanted to mention. There were no needy persons among them. From time to time, those who owned lands or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet. And it was distributed to anyone as he had need. Now, there's one word that's mentioned twice. Needy. It wasn't some kind of equality-driven thing about we're all going to be on the same page. What they did... Yeah, it was not that at all. They recognized those who were in need. That was the goal, which is what the goal still should be. There are people in need, and we are to help them because we love God and we love people.
Here's what said that the best for me in lieu of Acts 4. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please his sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, and the group of individuals you're talking about, the first initial startup of the kingdom, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Now watch this. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, here's the key. As we have opportunity, and these people had come together, and they were together in heart, and they were being good to one another. As we have opportunity, there'll be many opportunities, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers, which is what Acts chapter 2 and following, the family of believers have officially started. We made the mistake in the religious world, in my opinion. We splintered that, and we turned it into thousands of different denominations, and by doing so, it became much more divisive than it should have been from the get-go. I think if they'd have followed Galatians chapter 6, 1 through 10, if they had implemented that based on the book of Acts, coming together, taking care of the needy. Now, not everybody, just because they got their hand out, that doesn't mean if they're they're needy, they reached out to them. It is a good way to roll for any society, and America thinks that money will solve everybody's problem.
Well, the difference in what was going on here and what's...
Hang on, let's take one last break.
The difference in what was going on here and what's going on now is all of this came from freedom in Christ. You know, when you look all the verses up about what we have in where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom.
Yep.
It also says don't use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. But you say, well, how are we free? Because it seems like they were coerced into doing that. Well, I don't know where you see getting at. These people, compelled by their love of God, had placed those things in priorities, and they were living them. They saw needy people, and they thought, I am free to help these people in however way I see fit. And guess what? I'm going to sell some land, and I'm going to give it to them to distribute to those in need. That came from grace. The grace that was given to them compelled them to be generous. So that's the difference in that when you get to Acts 5, the scariest story in the Bible, in my opinion, we had people who didn't have those priorities in line. You know, Ananias and Sapphira, they didn't love God more than they loved each other because they took up for each other. You know, there's a line that you cross where, you know, I love my wife, but if she tried to get me to do something that was not godly, I would have to say, wait a minute. As much as I love her, more than anything else on the planet, I love God more. I'm not going down that road, which is why I think you have to have this discussion, because they do something that resulted in death, that set a foundation for the church that we now participate in now, which is, when you have the freedom to do all these wonderful things, but when you're trying to do things and come across that you love God and you want people in the faith to say, boy, they look at the heart they have. God's not pleased with that. Now, if it's coming from sincerity, okay.
To Dad's point, I think that's exactly what's transpired over 2,000 years of sort of church evolution, if you want to call it that, is the idea that you don't recognize unity and the needy as easy, because now it's so doctrine based that has splintered all these people. I mean, think about it. Here it was just super simple. Yeah. Jesus had died. He had been raised from the dead. These people saw it, and then we're telling these other people about it. There wasn't all this other stuff. And then over the course of time, you said it with the guy. In the bylaws, it says, well, look, so he goes back and digs up this thing out of your bylaws, and next thing you know, you got conflict. That's what has happened to churches.
Yeah, instead of the church performing its duty, reaching out to their neighbors and helping them, we said, "Oh, let the government do it." And once the government steps in and the money starts to flow, the money keeps flowing, but the poor still remain
and
poor.
Guess what? If the government loses that priority list, which is God, people, and things, you're going to have the same problem.
Oh, yeah.
But you know why? Look, our founders never anticipated the government to take care of people's personal lives.
Never.
They never even thought that way.
Never.
They were here to protect us from outside invasion or things like that, and to govern us.
Yep.
What does that have to do with giving money away? That's all come about in the modern era.
Yeah,
we're still 28 trillion in the hole here, America, and there's still a lot of poor people, a lot of people homeless on the streets. I mean,
if you're going to find out who's in need, it's going to have to be people on the ground in their communities that are having conversations and are in people's lives, trying to get them to stop cutting up and change course and direction, and then you're able to discern who are the needy. And it, from us, the way we work with people in our community, it's usually fairly obvious of someone who is truly in need.
Yep.
One of the ladies that y'all helped for years that I think we all in some way helped was an old widow lady in an African American neighborhood who was trying to get kid after kid after kid hooked on Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And get off drugs. She is awesome. And you say, well, what did y'all do? We helped her.
Yep.
Because she was a warrior for Jesus, and she was, I don't know how old she was. That was a joke, because she always looked the same age as years past.
Uridale Davis was her name. Uridale.
And she is awesome. So we all helped her and other widow ladies in that community. But to me, was that not obvious? And I would have given her, whatever money that the amount wouldn't have mattered to me, because I trusted her judgment and the way she carried herself and operated. Would you agree?
But look, Jace, the reason we did it is because we were close enough to her and other people to recognize the need.
Well, that's my point. You can't come up with a program, because then the people in the world who don't have the right priorities, they're going to try to take advantage of that system and manipulate, which is happening every day. That government money, they're like, ooh, think about how ridiculous the setup is. You got a few hundred politicians who are constitutionally there to do a job. The founders set it up that way. Then a few thousand bureaucrats trying to make decisions to help needy people, 350 million of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about a system that's bound for failure. There's no way that a few thousand bureaucrats can know the needs of 350 million people. No, it comes down to the church. And you get, the way that we're discussing is, you get to preserve what makes this country great, in that giving people the opportunity to make a lot of money. Why is that bad? They're like, well, because we just want a culture where everyone makes the same amount. Nope, give us a culture where you can have the opportunity to succeed from rags to riches. And then I know that the heart that gives and is generous and that helps people that are truly in need, I know that's going to come from a spiritual thing.
Yep.
And that's our big need. That's why that's the weapon we fight with. You want to change the culture, change the spirit.
And I think next time we talk about this, next time on the next podcast, we'll go into that a little bit more, because we get introduced to a guy who's nicknamed Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. We'll talk about him. But these were achievers, even there in the first century. These are people that own some property, own some houses. They were able to, because they owned stuff and sold it, able to help other people. But it was their choice to do it. And so that'll lead us into this Ananias and Sapphira story. So,
yeah, the teaser I'll leave with you is that you never want someone full of the Spirit of the Lord in this day to tell you, based on a lie that you're living, that the men who buried your husband are at the door and they'll carry you out also. That means you've gone down the wrong road.
It's a bad turn.
That's the scary sentence in this story.
We'll talk about it next time.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.